Welcome back, and thank you for joining us at Timeless Dora Stories, where every tale is crafted with love, emotion, and the kind of twists that leave you gasping for more. We've got something special for you today, a story of love, heartbreak, and family secrets. And I want to hear what you think at the end. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single word of this one. The late-night shift at the diner felt like it was dragging on forever. The flicker of the neon lights outside was the only thing that broke the silence, and Zoe Carter, as always, was left alone with her thoughts. She wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time, her movements automatic. The last few hours had been slow. It was almost closing time, and Zoe was just about ready to head home and forget about the exhausting day. But life had a way of interrupting her plans. That's when he walked in. He wasn't like the usual crowd that came in late at night. No, this man, he was different. His suit was sharp, the kind that looked like it could buy and sell everything Zoe had ever known. It wasn't just the clothes, though. It was the way he moved. Confident. Powerful. Unapproachable. He had a presence that made the air feel heavier as soon as he stepped into the diner. It was like the world around him was just waiting for him to take control. Zoe had worked at this diner long enough to know the usual customers. The regulars. The ones who came in for their usual cup of coffee, or a burger at 2 a.m. But this man? He wasn't a regular. He wasn't just anyone. He stood out, even more so under the dim, flickering lights. Zoe could feel her heart rate pick up as he walked toward an empty booth by the window. She'd seen wealthy people before, but there was something different about him. When Zoe approached him to take his order, she noticed how he didn't even glance at her at first. He was lost in his thoughts, staring out the window at the city street below, like the world outside held some kind of secret he was trying to figure out. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, like he had every right to be there. "Black coffee," he said. Simple. Direct. And without even waiting for her to respond, he returned his gaze to the city, as if she were no more significant than the chair he was sitting in. But Zoe didn't take offense. This was part of her job. People came in, ordered, ate, and left. No one ever stayed. She'd learned not to take it personally. As Zoe turned to leave, something unexpected happened. As she did, she heard the sound of something slipping from the man's wallet. A soft flutter against the floor. It was a photograph, and it landed face up, perfectly positioned for Zoe to see. Her eyes immediately snapped to it. Zoe's heart nearly stopped. Her fingers went cold as she bent down to pick up the photo. There, smiling up at her, was the face of a woman she knew better than anyone. The woman who had raised her. The woman she had called Mom. The woman whose face she had memorized every day of her life. Her mother. The woman she had lost. Why was her mother's photo in the wallet of this man? This stranger? This powerful, wealthy man sitting right there, acting as if the photo meant nothing? For a long moment, Zoe couldn't breathe. She stared at the photograph, her thoughts racing. She knew this face. The soft smile. The warm eyes. Her mother had kept a copy of this photo in a small box at home. Zoe had seen it countless times, each time her heart aching with the thought of how little she had known about her mother's past. But why would this man have it? Why would he carry around a picture of her mother like it was something important? Zoe's voice caught in her throat as she asked, barely able to control the tremor in her voice, "Where did you get this?" The words barely made it past her lips. Her pulse raced in her ears, and all she could do was hold on to the photograph tightly, her knuckles white. The man's head snapped up, and for the first time, he looked at her, really looked at her. His cold blue eyes met hers, and for a split second, there was something there. Something flickered across his face. But it was gone in an instant. A flash of recognition, of something deep, buried beneath layers of control. But it was gone before she could catch it. He's a stranger, after all. Yet, somehow, the way his eyes meet hers feels far too personal. "You must be mistaken," he says, his voice emotionless, brushing aside the moment as though it meant nothing. Zoe watches him carefully as he reaches for the photograph. Their fingers brush as he takes it from her, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. It's like an electric current passes between them. And then, just as quickly as it all happened, he tucks the photograph back into his wallet like it's a trivial item, like it doesn't matter at all. But Zoe knows better. She knows this is far from trivial. This isn't just a photograph of any woman. This is her mother, the woman who gave everything for her, who never asked for anything in return. And now this man, this stranger, has a piece of her mother's history. But why? Zoe's stomach twists, the knots in her chest growing tighter by the second. She wants to scream at him, demand answers. But instead, she's rooted to the spot, her mind racing, her heart hammering in her chest. She knows exactly what she saw. She's not mistaken. She can't be. "I'm not mistaken," Zoe says, her voice stronger now, firm. "Why do you have it?" The words are out before she can stop them, and for a moment, Zoe wonders if she'll regret it. She feels the heat rise in her cheeks, the adrenaline surging through her veins. She's afraid of the truth, but she's even more afraid of walking away without it. The man exhales sharply, his face unreadable as he adjusts the cuff of his expensive suit. It's a slight movement, but Zoe notices it. She notices everything. He's trying to regain control of the situation, trying to push her away, to silence the questions that are rising in her mind like a tidal wave. "I don't owe you an explanation," he says, his tone final, cold. And then, before Zoe can even react, he stands, placing a crisp $100 bill on the counter, as if it means nothing, as if it's an insignificant transaction. His indifference stings more than the shock of the photo. He doesn't even acknowledge her presence as he walks toward the door. But Zoe can't just let him leave. Not like this. Not when her mother's memory is still hanging in the balance. Her heart races as panic surges through her. This might be her only chance to find out the truth. She's not going to let him walk out of here without answers. Zoe rushes from behind the counter, her footsteps quick and loud against the diner floor. She knocks over a tray in her haste, but it doesn't matter. She can't stop now. She steps outside, the cool air hitting her face as she watches the sleek black car parked at the curb. The driver steps out, opening the door for the man. But Zoe isn't giving up. Not yet. "Wait." She calls, her voice shaking with desperation. "Please, just tell me how you knew her." For a split second, the man hesitates. Just a moment. His hand rests on the door of the car. Zoe's heart leaps in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, he was going to answer her. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally going to get the answers she had been searching for. But then, without a word, he turned and slid into the car. The door slammed shut behind him, and the car roared to life, pulling away from the curb, disappearing into the night. Zoe stood frozen on the sidewalk, her breath coming in ragged bursts. A billionaire had just walked into her life, and walked right out again, leaving her with more questions than ever. Who was he? And why did he have a photograph of her mother? What did it all mean? Zoe couldn't just let it go. Not now. She wouldn't. Not after everything that had just happened. She spent the rest of the night staring at her laptop, the screen glowing in the dim light of her small apartment. She searched. She searched for anything that could explain what she had just experienced. She typed in his name, Richard Lawson. The search results flooded her screen, but nothing about him connected to her mother. No family ties. No mention of her mother. Nothing. Frustration set in. Her fingers moved faster across the keyboard. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to stop until she had them. Hours passed. Zoe's frustration grew. She clicked on article after article, searching for anything that might help her understand why this man had a photo of her mother. But nothing. Not a single clue. Just as she was about to give up, a name caught her eye, Richard Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Enterprises. The name leaped off the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the man. This was the man who had walked into her life. Who had taken a piece of her mother's past and walked away without explanation. Zoe clicked on the link. The page loaded slowly, and when the image of Richard Lawson appeared, her heart raced. There was no doubt. This was him. But the article didn't mention her mother. It didn't mention any connection. Zoe felt her anger building again. Why was he hiding it? Why was he pretending her mother had never existed in his life? She clicked through more articles. More business news, more real estate developments. But no mention of her mother. Zoe spent hours scrolling through his life, through everything she could find about Richard Lawson, and yet, there was nothing. It was like her mother had been erased from his past entirely. She clenched her fists in frustration, the anger boiling inside her. She wasn't going to let this go. Not now. Not ever. The next day, she boarded a bus and headed downtown. The trip felt like an eternity. The closer she got to Lawson Global Enterprises, the more her heart raced. This time, she wasn't going to wait for answers. She was going to force them out of him. As she stood in front of the towering skyscraper of Lawson Global Enterprises, Zoe felt small. The glass building loomed over her, a symbol of wealth and power. But Zoe wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She wasn't going to let this building intimidate her. She wasn't going to let anything stop her from getting the answers she deserved. Zoe walked into the building, straight to the reception desk. She stood tall, her resolve unwavering. She needed to speak with Richard Lawson. There was no other option. She wasn't leaving until she had answers. When the receptionist looked up, she barely acknowledged Zoe. Zoe was used to that by now. She had no appointment. No business card. No leverage. Just her word. Just her truth. But that was enough. "I need to see Richard Lawson," she said firmly. "It's about my mother, Evelyn Carter. Tell him I need to speak with him." The receptionist barely glanced up. "Mr. Lawson doesn't take walk-ins," she said, as if this was just another routine interaction. Zoe didn't let it faze her. She didn't flinch. She wasn't here to be dismissed. She was here to get answers. Zoe wasn't going to let this be the end of it. She needed to find another way in. And she did. She noticed a young man walking past the security guard. He was distracted, balancing a coffee cup and a folder. Zoe's opportunity came. She moved quickly, slipping behind him, pretending to be just another employee. "Wait," she whispered urgently. "You forgot the report Mr. Lawson asked for." The young man blinked, caught off guard. Before he could react, Zoe smoothly followed him through the turnstile, passing through the security checkpoint without raising any suspicion. Zoe's heart raced as she made her way to the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. This was it. She was about to meet Richard Lawson face to face. This time, there was no turning back. Zoe stepped off the elevator on the top floor. The reception area was sleek, modern, intimidating. But Zoe didn't care. She wasn't here to admire the decor. She was here to demand answers. Her heart pounded as she approached the next receptionist. "I need to see Richard Lawson," she said, her voice steady. "It's about my mother, Evelyn Carter. Tell him I'm not leaving until I speak with him." The receptionist hesitated, then disappeared down a hallway. Zoe stood there, her chest tight with anticipation. Moments later, Richard Lawson stepped out from behind a door, his expression unreadable. He didn't look surprised to see her. Instead, he seemed resigned, like he had been expecting this moment for a long time. He didn't speak at first. Just motioned for Zoe to follow him into his office. When the door shut behind them, Zoe didn't waste any time. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" she demanded, her voice steady, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. For the first time, Richard Lawson hesitated. Then, he reached into his desk, pulling out the photograph that Zoe had seen just days before. He placed it on the table between them. "I didn't just know her," he said softly. "I loved her." Zoe's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't prepared for this. The man who had walked into her life like a stranger, the man who had walked away from her mother all those years ago, had loved her. This wasn't the answer she had expected. It wasn't what she had wanted to hear. "Why did you leave her?" Zoe whispered, her voice trembling now. Richard's expression darkened, the weight of the years pressing down on him. "Because I thought I could come back for her later," he said, his voice thick with regret. "But by the time I realized what I'd lost, she was gone." The words hit Zoe like a wave, crashing over her. She wanted to scream, to accuse him of betraying her mother, of causing so much pain. But instead, all she could do was stand there, her hands trembling, her mind reeling from the truth. She didn't know what to do with the knowledge. Her mother had suffered while Richard Lawson had lived in luxury. And now, she was left to pick up the pieces of a life she never knew. A life that had been hidden from her for so long. "She never told me about you," Zoe said quietly, her voice filled with disbelief. "Not once. Not even when I asked." Richard's eyes softened. "She wanted to protect you," he said. "She didn't think you needed to know the truth. She wanted you to be safe from me, from everything I did to her." Zoe couldn't find the words. Her chest ached with everything she had just learned. She had spent her entire life thinking she knew everything about her mother. But now, the truth was too complicated. Too painful. Zoe took a shaky breath, her fingers curling around the pendant her mother had left for her. "Forgive, love, begin." She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she had the power to decide how it would unfold. And with that, she left the office, not yet ready to call Richard her father. But she wasn't closing the door either. Not yet. Maybe some things couldn't be fixed. Maybe some things couldn't be erased. But just maybe, they could start over. Zoe's story is proof that the past doesn't have to define the future. Sometimes, healing isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding what comes next. So, what do you think? Should Zoe forgive Richard, or is it too late for them to rebuild? Leave your thoughts in the comments, we want to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this emotional roller coaster, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Until next time, thanks for watching Timeless Dora Stories.